to whoever kills them! MG.
I don't get it. Cocksucker. Semper Fi, motherfucker!
I swear. The seller, he didn't even tell me his name. He's like a big scary guy, for real. And he just wanted to split the door. Not even a big cut, like, I don't know. A movie wasn't even
Got some cool stuff here for you. All right, let's talk. I like that one too. Need any more? open.
As a very statesman-like diplomat, one of the most well-respected everywhere else but here, because he uses the right language, he never uses inflammatory language, he never uses language that could be misconstrued as being contentious. He's always to the point, just like a lawyer, okay? Only he doesn't lie. Well, it appears as though he doesn't lie. Here's what he had to say today, and listen up because this is very important.
Well, we had a little delay this morning on account of the videotape, but I understand. Delay this morning on account of the videotape, but I understand it's solved. We have a very interesting problem today. Sir Wallace Budge of the British Museum's Department of Egyptology and Babylonia pointed out that probably the most ancient civilization recorded on the western side of evolution was in the valley of the Euphrates. Babylonia and Phoenicia and Saba, from which we have later created the word Sheba. These civilizations were scientifically established not less than 5000 BC. Many believe much longer. And it was from this area that sciences in the Western world had their beginnings. On the plains of Babylonia, there were great observatories that were in ruins long before the beginning of Greek civilization. These towers were observatories, and they were also mysterious analogical symbols of beliefs that were held at that time. According to the Babylonians, the universe was a kind of mountain, And this mountain rose in seven ridges, or in seven levels. And finally at the top was an altar for the eternal God. Each of the levels of the towers, called ziggurats, was of a different color, and various pigments were used in the making of brick or of painting the surfaces afterwards. These colors represented those assigned to the seven planets known to the ancients. More correctly, 5 planets and 2 luminaries. These planet-luminary combinations represented a ladder, its lower rung upon the surface of the earth, and its higher rung reaching up to the jewel of 7 stars, the mystery of the Dipper. Actually, life to these people was a series of systematic ascents, and this system of ascending values applied to everything. It applied to the life of plants and flowers. It applied to the life of mankind, to nations, and to the planet itself. Every form of life was advancing systematically through 7 steps, and these steps had to be fulfilled if the final purpose of evolution was to be attained. These beliefs were very strongly transferred to Egypt and later to Greece and Rome. And the wise men of Babylonia came to be called Chaldeans, a term that did not necessarily mean that they came from the area known as Chaldea, which was part of Babylonia, but because of their knowledge, their wisdom. The Chaldeans were the sages that governed the states, regulated the empires, and informed and instructed the rulers. All of this was part of a very interesting program, a program which had to do with the 7 steps that all living things must make between their entry into this world and their departure therefrom. And regardless of the passing of time, of ages, of civilizations, and the rise and fall of customs and governments, these 7 steps came into prominence and were assigned to every living thing. All things that entered this world with the first step left with the 7th, and between the 2 were all the others in their proper sequences. Now, each of these steps was not only a symbolic pattern, but it was a responsibility. These 7 steps constituted the way in which all living things mature according to natural law. And any break or variation in this pattern was disastrous to those who broke the law. These 7 steps were the things that human beings and nations likewise had to understand and had to abide by the rules of the 7 stars, as they were called in those days. Now, this has nothing to do with astrology, so called. It has to do with a symbolic picture of the world as it was recorded by Ptolemy of Alexandria. And this system of Ptolemy remained undisputed until the rise of Copernicus and Galileo. And according to the Rosicrucians of the 17th century, modern astronomy does not conflict with the ancient system, because they apply to 2 different purposes. And the ancient system is just as true as the modern system, because it relates to psychological and mystical practices and policies which physical astronomy knows nothing about. So with our study of the problem, we come to the conclusion that there was a ladder of 7 problems, 7 things that had to be accomplished, 7 patterns of laws that had to be kept, 7 departments of human conduct that had to be fulfilled if the being was to pass on to the higher realms of insight. So we have this little problem this morning, and in the days of Ptolemy, the 7 luminary planets, or the combination of 5 planets and 2 luminaries, were assigned as rulers of these 7 steps. And these rulerships had nothing to do with fortune telling, and had nothing to do at all with the idea of the planets in their rulerships over personal destiny. The planets became the symbols of the great problems that had to be faced. And in mysterious ways, these planets were not only designating the fates of persons, they were also showing the pattern by which everything must live if it is to survive. Nature's laws were embodied in this septenary, and no one could break the rules without suffering. We are beginning now, in the last 5 years perhaps especially, to be aware of the danger of breaking rules. For some time we have lived very badly. For a long time we have abused nature. We have continued to break the normal patterns of human life, and in so doing have brought down upon ourselves one calamity after another. It is not that these calamities arise out of some mysterious evil spirit in the sky. They arise from the natural breaking of natural law. They arise from the fact that the individual does not keep the rules by which the universe was created, by which it must be maintained, and by which it will ultimately achieve perfection and pass on to still higher levels of life and patterned purpose. So in this particular case, we know that the planets represented problems. This doesn't mean that the planets bestowed these problems. They merely became symbols of them. The problems themselves are part of a great septenary of immutable principles and processes going on in life. The ancients understood this by a series of astronomical allegories, symbols, creating what is known as the geocentric system, a universe with the Earth in the center and not the Sun. Now, the reason why the Earth is in the center of this pattern is because this is where we are, and this pattern is prepared for us. It isn't prepared for creatures living on the Sun or in the galaxy. It is prepared for individuals who come into this world, into this Earth, into this natural environment, and they are the ones that have to obey these rules. And for these people, in this pattern, the ascending order of the planets and luminaries was different from that of today. It is not parallel with our modern concept of the solar system. In those ancient times, the planets ascending from the surface of the Earth began with the moon. The moon was the first, the second was Mercury, the third was Venus, the fourth was the Sun, the fifth was Mars, the sixth was Jupiter, and the seventh was Saturn. And those were the septenaries, those were the great deities of the Olympian throne, and also show in Oriental philosophy. Now these 7 constituted the ladder, about up which the human being, the nation, the world, governments, religions, everything have to ascend in the process of birth and rebirth. Birth into this world and rebirth into the natural universe toward which we are all moving. In the old days, the Sabians and Chaldeans and Babylonian seers, and it's interesting that in the latest revision of the Bible, the 3 wise men who came to the cradle of Jesus are restored to their original meaning. So the printed version now says the 3 astronomers, or astrologers. They were the Babylonians coming in search of the fulfillment of a natural law. So with this point in view, we are reminded that in the ancient times, the different ones of these 7 orbits, or 7 forces, were given different year allotments. Some had many years given to them and some a few. But with the addition of 3 planets to the solar system in more recent times, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, we now have 10 instead of 7 elements with which to work. To meet this command or change, it has been normally accepted to allow each of the 10 to represent 10 years of natural life. Therefore, the 10 planets, or the 8 planets and the 2 luminaries, cover a period of life of 100 years, each one having 10 years, each one assigned to a 10-year period. And through these sets of 10-year periods, all living things pass. Kingdoms pass into democracies and into chaos. Governments go from strictness to anarchy. Human beings pass from childhood to old age. Health passes from good to bad. Virtues rise and fall. Empires come and go. Wars and peace alternate. In all things, this septenary, or now brought up to a decade of 10, will represent 10 periods of 10 years each. And therefore, what we're going to do now is to determine, if we can, the rules of these 10-year periods as they relate to the civilization we live in now, not as the ancient times, and also relate to the 10 inevitable divisions of human life. We not only have what the ancients referred to as the 7 rounds and races, that was part of it in the old days, but now we have the 10 instead of 7, and we have to recognize the need of coming to a new pattern of interpretation. To begin with, then, we will take the first, which was symbolized on the ziggurats of Babylon by a white platform, the lowest of the various platforms of the pyramids or towers of observation. So this is governed by the moon. So for the first 10 years of natural life, or the first 10th of world life, the ruler was the moon. Now the moon represented a series of processes that had to be followed. The moon was the symbol of water from which life comes. The moon was the symbol of the eternal mother, the great lunar goddess, Isis, the lady of the moon. It was also the same in the old rites and ceremonies that this was the beginning of life. Now what is bestowed by this is a very interesting pattern, and the ancients summed it very simply. The whole existence of a race or a nation depends upon the first 10th of its duration. If it is a human being, 10 years. In a nation it may be 100 years, to be 1/10 of its age. But for human beings, this process extends from the first to the 10th year of life. And back in Babylonia in the old days, said if this first 10th went wrong, all the rest would go wrong. In the first 10 years, the child coming into embodiment must have certain processes fulfilled to perpetuate it. It must have all the needs that must be developed. And the Babylonians way back in their days pointed out definitely that the first thing to help a child coming into life must be that it is wanted. It must be brought in from the need of the parent to fulfill the law of life. It must be no accident, no incident, nothing that is a problem or a worry. For if there's a worry in the heart of the mother, there will be a defect in the mind of the child. All of this early part must be right. The child must learn, first of all, to know that it is loved and cared for. It must be taught to walk. It must be taught to use its faculties. It must be taught what to eat and how to eat. It must be given all the care, love, and attention necessary to a little stranger that has come into an unknown world, a world which it has nothing to protect it but the parents. Therefore, the moment the child is conceived, a great duty falls upon the adults. And if those duties and that duty, if this is not fulfilled, the child and the parents will both suffer. This was a rule back in the days of Hammurabi, king of Babylonia, that all these processes must be sincere, meaningful, and purposeful. Now, as we go on into the child in the period of its lunar life, we also find all of the stages of unfolding consciousness, its contact with the outside world, its more intimate contact with parents, and later with friends and brothers and sisters. All these things must be fulfilled with absolute sincerity. They must be real, they must be true, and they must be important. If these are neglected, we begin to produce a generation of misfits, and that is exactly where we are today. The Babylonians were just assured it 6,000-7,000 years ago. After it gets a little older, then comes the problem of introducing this little one to a world in which there are still other steps to follow. All of the essentials of life were brought into manifestation and brought into purposeful existence in this period of the moon's ruling the infant. We find, for instance, that Comenius, the founder of the public school system, writing in the 17th century AD, said definitely that all civilization begins with the relationship between the child and parents. Nothing else can substitute. You cannot buy a tutor for $1,000 an hour that can take the place of the natural affection of parents. Also, the parent must be a natural, honest, honorable teacher. Whatever the parent advises the child to do, it must do itself also. It must keep the rules that he gives to the child, or the child will fail. Comenius, the founder of the modern public school system, brought this out very well, and it was reaffirmed in the labors of Madame Montessori. Namely, that the first school, the first place of learning, is at the mother's knee. It is before the child enters kindergarten that its morality for life is established. This establishment may be considered as psychic. It is a communication outside of words and terms. It is something that happens. It is an almost magnetic exchange of values. But it all has to be done while the moon is guiding the infant into the next step of its development. Here we find the beginnings of religion. Religion begins in the home. The religion begins when the parents practice the commandments and also bestow from their own consciousness the beauties of the Beatitudes. Here the child has to learn to see the world for the first time. It learns the beginnings of its language, of its relationships, of its duties, of its responsibilities. And it also becomes aware of the strength of the world into which it is coming. And if this world into which it comes is not strong, the child is weakened. So in this period, all the foundations are put in. Before the child is 10 years old, finishing the lunar cycle, its character is established, its probabilities of happiness, of success, of its interest in making a contribution to life, its morality, its ethics, all these things have to be there in seed form before the second layer comes in. The years between 11 and 20 were ruled by Mercury, and Mercury was associated by the ancients with education. Here the child comes for the first time into contact with learning as such. And what is learning? What is education? Education is teaching the child how to use the experiences of the past to make the present better for all concerned. Any method of education which distorts the history, deforms or discharges the moral responsibilities established by nature, can be injurious to the child. It has to learn its 3 R's. It must also add another one to all the others, and that is, it must learn faith, love. It must see that education helps the individual to be better, not just simply brighter. That education is a moral, spiritual, intellectual, physical system of improving character. Any education which does not make the person a better person is no substitute for knowledge. It's an education which teaches him to keep a job or advance in business, but does not teach him to keep the rules of basic living. Thus an education is false. So education becomes the great problem of the second period. This is the first impact of the world upon the child. The child then learns how other people live, how other people think. And if the child's personal life has not been integrated before it is ushered into this vast cyclone, its future is exceedingly doubtful. And the mistakes made in these periods cannot be rectified later. That is, not entirely. They can be helped. But those basic convictions upon which we all must learn to live and lead, all must be established first. So the end of education is to produce a good human being, intelligent in realities, able to face life with truth, able to meet the emergencies of life with understanding, with courage, and with integrity. If education does not make a better person, a skillful one can ruin the world. So we have to be very watchful and thoughtful of how we use these problems as they come along. Here's the second problem then, learning. And unless this problem is solved, we're all in trouble. And it has not been solved. There were moments when it was better than it is now. There were moments when it was worse. But the fact remains that the average individual can go from the cradle to the grave and consider themselves a success in many fields, and in many areas, without for one moment believing that it is necessary to cultivate personal virtues. Out to make a name for himself, out for success. All education being turned towards adjustment to a material world rather than the unfoldment of an internal potential. And yet even the educator must know that all this education and all that comes from it, all the physical part of it, is temporal. The individual will last a few years and depart. And all the things that he could take with him he has left undeveloped. And all that he must leave behind has been made important. So this is the second. To make an education that not only will go through this life but beyond, will help to make the individual a reasonable and proper member of the universal family. The same thing is true in community life. The educational system of nations. A nation which does not have an idealistic concept of education will always be in trouble. Because within the individual, when we break the natural rules of the patterns of life in which he is living, there is something in himself that objects. There is something in himself that tells him that it is wrong. But with many doing the same thing, he gradually ignores his own.
Stop paying for life insurance that doesn't include
member of the universal family. The same thing is true in community life. The educational system of nations. A nation which does not have an idealistic concept of education will always be in trouble. Because within the individual, when we break the natural rules of the patterns of life in which he is living, there is something in himself that objects.